When someone dies, the people left behind are given one final responsibility: to carry out their last wish and lay them to rest with dignity. It's a moment built on trust. Trust in the system, trust in the process, and most importantly, trust in the people handling your loved one. But what happens when this trust is completely broken? This is the story of the Sunset Mesa Funeral Home. In Colorado, a woman named Megan Hess owned and operated a funeral home called Sunset Mesa Funeral Directors. On the surface, everything looked normal. She offered burial and cremation services, often at lower prices than anyone else in the area, and for grieving families, that mattered. But behind the scenes, something much darker was happening. The story really begins in 2009. Megan created a nonprofit called Sunset Mesa Funeral Foundation, or SMFF for short. It was presented as something compassionate, a nonprofit organization that could help families who couldn't afford funeral services and facilitate body donations for research. Not long after, she registered a trade name for SMFF, Donor Services. A trade name is basically just an alias, or like another name used by that business. By 2011, Megan had purchased the actual funeral home, Sunset Mesa Funeral Directors. So now everything was connected: a funeral home, a nonprofit, and a body broker operation, all under the same control and at the same location. Here's where things take a turn. There is a legitimate industry for donated human remains. Bodies can be used for medical research, surgical training, and education, but it's supposed to be highly regulated, fully transparent, and most importantly, consensual. What Megan Hess was running was something entirely different. In 2018, prosecutors say Megan, along with her mother, Shirley Koch, carried out a long-running scheme. Families would come in, grieving, vulnerable, and trusting. They would arrange cremation, and in many cases, that cremation never happened. Instead, bodies were secretly diverted into the broker side of the business. They were dissected, sold, and distributed, sometimes as individual body parts, such as legs, arms, torsos, or even heads. Other times, entire bodies were sold. And here's what makes it worse. In many cases, families were never asked for consent, explicitly refused donation, or were misled about how the remains would be used. Some believed their loved ones would contribute to medical research or to help save lives. Instead, their bodies were sold in ways they never agreed to. Even when partial consent was given, prosecutors say it was often ignored. If a family only agreed to donate specific tissue, other body parts or even the entire body might still be sold. Meanwhile, those same families were charged for cremation services, sometimes over $1,000, for a cremation that never actually took place. And what did they receive in return? In many cases, it wasn't their loved one. Families reported receiving ashes that were mixed, substituted, or completely unrelated to the person they lost. While all this was happening, Megan's business had a competitive advantage. Because selling body parts was so profitable, she could offer extremely low cremation prices, sometimes even free, which brought in more families and created a steady supply of bodies. But the deception didn't stop there. To make the operation appear legitimate, documents were created showing consent for donation, except in many cases, those forms were forged. Other times, there was no authorization at all. And there was another disturbing layer. Many buyers, medical or research facilities required that the remains be tested for infectious diseases like HIV and hepatitis. According to court records, those tests were done, but when the results came back positive, they were altered to show negative. This meant that contaminated remains were still being sold and shipped through the mail on commercial flights, all violations of federal regulation. By the time everything came to light, the scale of the operation was staggering. Hundreds of bodies were affected, and families across the country were left questioning whether they had ever truly received their loved ones. In 2018, the FBI raided the facility, and what they uncovered would expose one of the most disturbing funeral home scandals in the United States history. In 2022, Megan Hess pled guilty to fraud. She was later sentenced to prison. Her mother, Shirley Koch, was also sentenced for her role. This case isn't just about one funeral home, it's about what happens when the trust is exploited at the most vulnerable moments in somebody's life. Because when families walk into a place like this, they're not just handing over a body, they're handing over everything: their grief, their trust, their final goodbye. And in this case, that trust was sold. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have anything to add, please feel free to leave it in the comments, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye.